Welcome to the Healthusiasm podcast, a panel discussions on innovations in health and self-care. My name is Christophe Jauquet. I'm a health business expert, author, and keynote speaker. Every week, I discuss with a panel of experts the positive changes that are shaping our health and happiness. And for this discussion, we have two of your beloved experts in the panel. Calling in from Barcelona is our digital health connector, Aline Noizet.
Hola.
And then from Scotland, but living near Brighton, medical expert in digital innovation, Dr. Keith Grimes.
Fit like Abdi and Happy New Year, but it'll probably be a bit late when you hear this.
Yes, Happy New Year to all of you, to all our listeners. Well, we are missing out on, from Belgium, our human experience expert, Mo Zouina. Apparently, he is struggling with his internet connection. Made me think, how long can we live without internet, guys? How long could you, if you don't have an internet connection like Mo is having right now, how long is not too long for you personally?
Yeah, a few days. I understand Mo, I would also stay at home to make sure that it's fixed. Yeah, I think we've become very dependent on internet now.
A few days. I wouldn't say a few days even, I think.
My ability to be able to do my work would essentially stop while it was being sorted out. But I suppose what that would mean is that I could then become more human again and, spend time with friends and family and my dog and read and things. But I would find it difficult.
Yeah, I would say like half a day is maybe the max that I would support, mentally. Maybe you have some relaxed time, but it's half a day is already long. Think about electricity. How long can you live without electricity? 1 hour, 2 hours before you get anxious or before it becomes really obnoxious? Now, in the future, we will have the same thing with AI, right? Yeah. At some point, we had an outage of OpenAI for 3 hours and had to reschedule my full day. I think it was a month ago or something.
Well, there was one yesterday. There was one yesterday as well.
Oh, I didn't feel it. But just thinking about it, we have electricity, internet, and now we have AI. And those three things, first of all, they all depend on electricity. They depend on the internet. But imagine if we don't have those. It will be sketchy times.
It is a worry. And actually, we maybe come back to it in a future episode, but our dependence on technology for health and wellness, but even from a business perspective, as AI gets wrapped into business processes, let alone, inside a product, and people become more dependent, businesses stop if you're very dependent. So I spend lots of time working with people, contingency planning starts to get very important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I wish Mo a nice, chill morning this morning. Enjoy not having internet, and hopefully he's back online next time we speak. For this episode, we have, I think, a jam-packed session. Is that how you say it? Really cool, using cool words, because there's a lot of things happening always in January. There's a lot of events. There's a lot of launches. So yeah, without further ado, Aline, let's maybe start with you. What kind of healthusiasm did you see last month, in the month of January?
So maybe we can start with CES. So as you were saying, beginning of January is always CES, and we see all the cool innovation coming from there. So what I found this year, I was looking at the innovation. I'm like, well, that's not exactly new. So there were solutions that we've seen before. So some new solutions from new companies were launched there, but not really innovative per se. No, we've seen solution to track hormones with the saliva, the smart rings, smart mirrors. But as maybe I can share with you a few that I saw that I found interesting and different. So there's a device that's called Isaac from a company called Prevent, and it's actually a revolutionary non-invasive device to monitor an individual's blood glucose levels using just the breath. So I thought that was interesting. See how it develops in the future. And then another one is called Elehear. So that's a smart hearing wearable that offers real-time translation across multiple languages, tinnitus relief, and also sound clarity. So I think that will also change the way we interact with people. Another one, I like yoga, and they presented a special yoga mat called the Yocto mat. So it's an IoT-enabled smart yoga mat that uses embedded sensors to give insights into posture and balance. So there are sensors were displaying the weight distribution on the map, and it helps us to improve posture and poses. So I think that was really cool. And the last one that maybe was the one that I like the most, it's called Tone Buds. And they are earbuds that you wear at night. And it uses calming noise-making sounds to help us fall asleep. And once the earbuds detect that we're asleep, they stop. So that's kind of solution I would like to try.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, earbuds have been on CES for quite a couple of years, right? I mean, I think 4 or 5 years ago, it was all about earbuds, but we haven't seen a lot happening in the meantime. But I think this time it was really, you really can see some results with earbuds and those kind of things. One thing that I saw while you were talking about, you know, the translation thing that is happening, I think Meta announced, I don't have it in my notes, but I remember it from reading it. Meta announced that they have 100% simultaneous translation now. So while the words roll out of somebody's mouth, it is translated immediately in your earbuds, and they can do it with 101 languages immediately. So that might be a game changer, definitely also in healthcare if that is necessary.
Yeah, I remember hearing back that a few weeks ago, and you know, me loving languages, and I've learned like 10 languages. I was like, I'm not sure, because what does it mean? People are not going to learn languages anymore. And I think you're missing something. But I see the convenience of talking to people.
Yeah, it's definitely convenience. But me too. I've learned 6 or 7 languages, and I really appreciate it. It's not the most fun thing to learn, but if you start getting to get the hang of a language and the nuances and the way that you pronounce things, I feel like if you talk in Italian, there's a whole different way of speaking, right? And although those kind of things really are really funny to do, so if you're gonna miss out on that, most likely even, yeah, it's a bit of a pity.
Yeah, I mean, any technologies that come along and alleviate the labor of something also alleviate the benefit, because through labor there are certain benefits as well, and also some of the joy. And you know, so I'm British, and as is typical of Brits, my other languages aren't so good. I apologize for that. And I suppose the first thing to learn from that is that this is exactly what happens when other people conform principally to how you're speaking. You know, I don't feel the same pressure to learn other languages because people will very kindly often speak my language. And then you can imagine you got an automatic translating set of headphones, you know, that continues. So depending on how you feel about people that selfishly just speak the one language, or if they choose to do others or whatever, you know, this could amplify it. I would say, though, that in my defense, when I worry about that, I do know lots of other languages, but those languages are computer programming languages, you know, and what I find interesting about that is that I know those languages does change how I think about
reflection.
everything. I think in that language. And this past year, I've started to learn to play the saxophone. I've never played any instruments before, never done music before, and I always wanted to. So I'm now learning the language of the saxophone
Notes.
or music. And that is changing how I'm thinking too. So yeah, we may get some benefits from having these translations, but we lose something. So it's the same with everything. And yeah, but it also opens up things. If I might just say, last week I had an interesting week, and I saw a documentary called Cyborg about a man called Neil Harbisson. And Neil Harbisson is one of the world's first cyborg. I mean, a lot of people argue about this. He was born completely colorblind, and he elected to early on have like a webcam, and it would convert color to a tone or a sound, because he's a musician.
I heard that.
And anyway, and it started to work, and he started to integrate it, but he wanted to go one step further. So he basically had a hard implant, like basically a fixing point on the back of his head. And he has an antenna with a camera on the end of it all, and it uses bone conduction to convert color into sound. It was an amazing documentary, mainly because for me, it was how he hears colors and restores some of that. But he developed, the bit that was interesting is that he developed a kind of meta sense, because it was there all the time. He didn't think about it. It was just there. But color now meant something different to him. He could perceive color, but it was somewhere between sound and vision. So yeah, I think with translation and these other things, as you get augmented hearing, it'll be interesting to see how that changes our senses and whether we feel well or unwell as a result of it.
Yeah. I'm just going to do my best Mo Zuina impression here. People are inherently lazy. So they always look for the lazy solution. Was that a good one?
Yeah, he's in the room. He's in the room.
Okay, let's stick with CES because I have one that I saw there as well. I mean, as Aline is saying, there's always a lot of cool new tech that you can see, but there's also a lot of announcements. And I'm always looking out for those ones. And there was one made by Drew Schiller, which is the president of Validic. Now, if I have to explain Validic in simple words, it's kind of like software, if you will, that integrates with all sorts of wearable devices to collect all the data in one place so that it can more easily integrate with others. And so their amazing announcement, I think, which I think we all have been waiting for years and years and years, is that they will integrate the data from more than the 350 wearable devices directly into electronic health records like Epic and Oracle Health, which is pretty interesting, right? And it's just even only the activity or the movement. This is something which today does not even exist, definitely not in Europe, or very rarely. It's not really on a constant basis, let's put it that way. That's pretty interesting because 44% of Americans, and I've only found the Rock Health data from America, but 44% of Americans have activity trackers. I think in Europe it must be similar. And 82% of those people are willing to share their data with the health providers, which is quite high. So if we would do that, it would allow people, doctors, to see the medical records and as well the daily health data in one place, which is finally happening. I mean, we were talking about it for 10, 15 years, probably even, which will help to give more personalized guidance. I think, Keith, you're a doctor. If you would know whether or not people move, maybe how they sleep, it would definitely help you to make your advice and maybe your consultation more personalized, I think, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think I see, Aline, actually, you, before I come into what it means to you as a doctor, maybe you want to come in first.
Yeah, actually, my question here would be, I'll be curious to understand and to see how those data are displayed in the record, because I know, talking to doctors, they're like, not all of them know what to do with that. And if it comes just like raw data, like the results of 3 months of activity, doctors don't have time. So is it like display and presented in a way, analyzed, that makes sense for doctors? That would be my doubt.
I don't know exactly, but I know that in the past I've worked on doing something similar with electronic health records. And most of the time, the advice that they get from physicians, and that's how most electronic health records want to go about, is they don't want to put it in plain sight. They want to highlight it as something which is not coming from inside the healthcare system and put it somewhere in the back. So it's not something which is easily visible. And, we all know how these Epic and Oracle Health, these type of electronic health records are constructed. They're really heavy tools, hard to use. Most of the physicians don't even use 10% of the possibilities. So without the fact, that it's wonderful that it's integrated, we're not there in changing the habits of physician of finding those data, knowing what to do with it. I think they're also not trained, maybe even to interpret these data, right?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe I'll come in on that as well, because it is good news that this is coming, and there's lots of different sort of threads we could expand on that. But if I come back to, as a doctor, if the wearable data is presented to me, you're right. Actually, the first thing is that, I'm an older doctor now, and so I was taught about metrics and data that has meaning from a medical perspective. Mm-hmm. And so it's gone through trials, and there's a lot of previous medicine in there as well. So when it comes down to, when I'm looking at sleep data, for example, I might know a bit of it as a general practitioner, but it's mostly come from sleep medicine, polysomnography, and everything. And therefore, if a person comes and says, look at this Oura ring, the first thing I go, well, this isn't a medical device. How do I know that this is trustworthy data? And some of these figures that you're giving me, some of them I recognize, like latency and duration, but some of them, like restfulness, seem to be completely made up. Now, that maybe restfulness is entirely accurate. This is why I'm going to get on why I think this happening is so important. That data then makes it into an integrated record and is then subject to the necessary further analysis, which can then integrate it into conventional medical knowledge and wisdom, is the unlock that we need for the wider medical community to start accepting it. Before this happens, then we have to wait for Oura or Withings or anyone to do the trials, and then the profession says, well, this is commercially inflected and we can't trust it. So by bringing it together, and also now that we have AI able to crunch data across this, we've got a much greater, richer, higher dimensional set of data, which can legitimize this, and we can truly learn the associations. And that is the key for medical scientists and people who work that way to start accepting it. So that's the bit that I think is really powerful.
Exactly.
And then, of course, the point at which the doctor or the nurse accepts that some of these metrics are truly important, it will then naturally be pushed to the front of the UX. So yeah, when you were talking about this, I thought this is great news, but for that reason. But at the same time, the evidence base is rising outside. So I think this is really positive.
Yeah. Yeah, and totally. And we'll see how it goes. But I think it's a very, very important first step indeed. Keith, what healthusiasm did you see in the last month?
Well, I mean, there's been a few. And so maybe the one that I'll start with was, so remember I said last week was an exciting week and I did lots of things and I saw the Cyborg documentary. Well, I also had my annual health screening. Everything's okay, don't worry. But I had it at Daniel X Neko. I had a Neko scan, and Neko is in the news at the moment, partly because Daniel Ek of Spotify fame, it's his next thing, along with some other people. And he's moved into the world of health and wellness and screening. And in fact, just this last week, so we're recording this towards the end of January in 2025, they announced a big raise, $260 million on a valuation of 1.7 billion. So yeah, lots of money swirling around. Neko is a very space age clinic that you go into, started in Sweden, and they've opened a clinic in London. And I booked in early, and so I just got this. And what you do is you go in to, it feels like something out of 2001, the movie. Everything's very sort of soft and round seats and funny lights and things like that. Everyone's dressed very nicely. And you go in, you get, everything's done through your phone, you check in, and then you go in, you undress into a gown, and then you go into this sort of treatment room, or this room which has got a couch with some sensors above it, and then this big brightly lit tube. And so what happens in there is that they use some technologies. Many of them are actually quite simple technologies like blood pressure, peripheral circulation, ECG. A few slightly more novel technologies, such as broad spectrum laser interferometry and so on, mainly to detect circulation issues. Thermography, checking the temperature of different parts of the body. They take some blood tests as well. But the bit that was really exciting is you stand in this tube, or basically this platform, and then the thing closes behind you, and it takes loads of photos in like a very bright flash, like you put your arms out and it takes like photos of all around your body. And then you come out and then the nurse finishes stuff. And then once that's all done, you then go to another little room. It's all very nice. And then you sit down on these two chairs and there's this massive screen in front of you. And the doctor then takes you through all your results. And that was really good. So that was the first part. I can talk you through the things that they had, but it was a very pleasant experience. And, it was very nicely done. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
How long were you on the waiting list to be able to enter that? Because there
was a long waiting list, but what happened is the minute they announced they were going to open in London, I said, I'm going to go to the waiting list. And so it opened up in early November. And actually I had an appointment at the start of December, but I couldn't make it. So I had to reschedule. So I wasn't on the waiting list for very long, but I did get in quite early. I think the waiting list is long now. And yeah, and I also pestered them with the fact, I'm a health tech influencer and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that helps. I don't know. But either way, I think went through the same experience that any user would have. And yeah, it was good. But
and how long did it? The whole experience? How long did it take?
It took basically exactly an hour, and they said it would take an hour. I came in, sat down, was made comfy, and then after it was all wrapped up, I left like bang on time. So an hour to have all these things done. I can break down the things that I had actually, because that might be interesting to you.
Do you get all the information that day, or do you receive more information after you leave in a few days after?
The minute you leave, you get it in front of you. And also, like other really interesting things, you get consented for the use of an ambient scribe. So when you're doing the consent process on your phone, you QR code and you click in and you're doing the consenting and providing some information. It says we use dictation technology to summarize the notes. Are you okay? And it's nice to see consenting done that way. And I like ambient scribes in practice. I think they're very useful. So once you've had all the information presented back to you, they've obviously worked very hard to turn it into a very readable report, but it also happens like that. So what they showed me on the screen and the flow then turned into a really readable and actionable output. So it was nicely done.
Can I ask you what are the three things, maybe, or two things, if three is too much, that you experienced there that you would love to see in a healthcare setting, maybe a hospital, whatsoever?
I'll put one right at the very top, the skin photography. Now, that dermatology is a big area of medicine. And when I was practicing a lot, I'd say, maybe 20% of the stuff I saw was related to the skin in some bit. Now, as a general practitioner, I get a reasonable amount of skin training. I'm not a specialist, and some GPs become specialists, but I'd have a lot of it. And the really common problem, and it's a common problem worldwide, is about, skin cancers and lesions. So you want to get very good at identifying those. Now, the truth is, on everyone's bodies, we have a lot of skin lesions. We've got moles and freckles and everything like that. And the trick is to try and identify when those are changing and if you're worried about them. Now, how many skin lesions do you have on your body? And I found this out to the number at the event, because what happens is they take these photos, and then after they've had the photos, before I went to see the doctor, he came through and he had a dermatoscope, one of those little close vision things. And he said, are there any of the moles or lumps or bumps that you're worried about? And I said, oh, maybe this. And he looked at those. But then he said, I'm just going to look at 5 others. And those 5 others, I found out when I went through to see him. When I had that scan, I had 1,120 individual freckles, like even tiny ones, that he had photographed, isolated, analyzed, and ranked. And the ones that were most atypical, it located them. And when he came through, he looked at them. And that was amazing. So the ones I was worried about, but even the ones that I didn't know, like the middle of my back, behind my knee. When you have the photos, you're just in your undergarments, so basically just my underwear. So other than the hair on my head and what's under my underpants, everything was photographed. And then,
luckily.
yeah. Well, I mean, if they'd said, take your pants off, I'd have been like, well, that's okay, as long as you don't share.
Sure.
And, but when I had the consultation afterwards, this big screen, they brought it up and it had the photos of me, which are, you're like, well, it's me semi-naked, bright lights. But then it showed every single lesion, split it into the table. You could pick any of them. And then it showed how they analyzed them from size, atypicality. And the ranking was done in 2 ways. Number one, based on, what the AI model was trained on. But the second thing is it was based on how all my lesions compared to each other, which is really important. And then the final thing was, he said, now you've had this, you have this stored. When you come back, which they recommend, of course, we will compare the change. And that is amazing. And that is not available in practice. I would love to see that available in practice.
How often do they recommend you to come back? Once a year?
Once a year. And it costs 300 UK pounds, which is expensive for a lot of people. Well, here's the thing, right? In the UK, because of how healthcare is provided, because no money changes hands, people aren't well disposed to the idea of paying for it. But no, you are right. £300 for that. I'd have paid that for the photos alone.
Yeah.
And there was a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, that I don't even have to go through the rest. That was amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a lightweight version for a couple of years in Belgium, which is, I can't remember the name exactly, Lead Life, I think. And there's a couple of others, but they don't do everything that Neko is doing. I think they do like 20 or 30% of that. And I think you pay over €1,000 per month, per test actually. And you need to do it a couple of times. So that's why I say 300 is not much. Obviously it's a bit of money that you need to put down, but compared to what my experience is that it's pretty low.
Yeah.
And that's always the thing. I mean, living in Belgium, what we notice now, we're a small country and there's other small countries in the world, is that we always talk about, different speeds in healthcare or different speeds in technology. Very often we think about people being able to pay for it or whatsoever. But more and more what we see, I think, is that these technological innovations, they first go to the big countries where there's a lot of potential, or the big cities even. And there's a lot of technologies or innovation that we don't even get right now already in Belgium. So I think in the future it will be, maybe even more. I don't know. But Neko Health is not coming soon to Belgium anyway, I think. So
well, you could understand why they would do certain things commercially, and also there's the data play as well. Because when I was having this, like for example, my blood pressure was okay. And the thing they said is like, this is your blood pressure. You're a man of this age and this ethnicity. This is what the guidelines say. So they have the guidelines. Then they have me. And then they said, and this is how you compare to all the other men of the same age that we have collected the data on. So I can see myself against them. And then they said that and said, and as we measure your blood pressure when you come back, we will track that against your norm
and the change,
that norm and the guidelines. And the final thing that they did that was very powerful is they did the sort of cardiovascular age, which again, some doctors are like, they don't like the idea of it because it doesn't have a strong evidence base. Fantastic for conveying risk in an easy way. Fantastic for motivating change, I think. But what they then did is they said, okay, so this is your age now. Let's plot what we expect your blood pressure to do over the coming 30 years.
Oh.
And so I saw this trend going like, ooh, like that. And then they said, so as you are right now, we would not expect you to cross into the high blood pressure threshold by continuing the practices that you do right now. They gave advice. All the advice they gave was essentially around about lifestyle modification and things like that. But that, again, really, really understandable. Like, and I don't think it's because I know more about the medicine side. It was just really nice and clear. So lots of maybe small things, but brought together very well. And maybe that's the other thing I would say. It's about that kind of experience, because we may say, oh, it's all about the facts, but it has to, Mo will be happy to hear this when he hears this. It's about like how it's presented, how you feel about this sort of thing. So I know I'm coming across as a real optimist, and there are challenges about it, but I can only speak about how I felt. I was very happy.
Oh, good to hear. Good to hear. And thank you for sharing that. It's interesting to know how that went, because I was very curious about it. Maybe back to some other Healthusiasms, Aline. Do you have any more for us?
Yes, so I have one related to women's health and also related to the announcement you did before with Validic. So this one is coming from Whoop, the wearable company. So some researchers at Whoop have introduced a new digital biomarker for monitoring menstrual cycle using wearable technology. So they developed a new metric that they call cardiovascular amplitude that measures the fluctuation in resting heart rate and heart rate variability throughout the menstrual cycle. So this new metric actually offers non-invasive monitoring of female physiology and underlying health. And it could also serve to measure hormone levels during cycles in a cheaper way than saliva or urine tests, for instance. So to do that study, they analyzed over 45,000 menstrual cycles with over 11,000 participants. And that represents the largest investigation into cardiovascular changes across menstrual cycles using wearable technology. So I think this is already a good news. And I was actually particularly excited by that news because those fluctuations that they're mentioning is something that I've been noticing myself using my Oura ring. So I'm very glad that research and science is really looking into that, and we can use those information, make sense of them, and take actions afterwards.
Oh, super cool, super cool. And it was based on AI, or it was just
yep, exactly.
Probably, yeah.
Wow, amazing. Just to come in on that, I mean, once again, this goes to show that difference between what wouldn't come to the front of my mind. Of course, this is, however, that explains a lot about medicine, of course, doesn't it? But really, really powerful to hear that link between non-invasive markers, such as heart rate variability, and something that would otherwise require a subjective report from a person, or maybe you would think otherwise about how you'd measure it. If there's really good correlation or concordance between those metrics and that's really impressive news. I say this because of late, as I try and properly understand and femtech and female health in a way that's supportive all round, the importance of being able to routinely track someone who menstruates cycle, which is not frequently captured in medical records, I increasingly hear that this is like a core metric that should always be mentioned. And in fact, I went to an event and someone said, what should we be doing? Well, one thing we should be doing, and the lady on stage said, every time a patient comes to you and if they're menstruating, ask them about their cycle and write it down every time, unless there's another good reason not to. And
well, just to quickly jump in, personal coaches are doing this, right? Yeah. If you have a personal coach as a woman, the first question that a personal coach is asking is, where are you in your cycle, so that he or she can adapt the program, because that is how basically you need to do it. I mean, you might feel totally different depending on where you are in the cycle. So it only makes sense that the physician would ask that same question, I guess.
I suppose the other thing as well is that Aline has got that sort of rueful smile. It is, of course, obvious to over half of the world's population. This case, it's only a surprise to you and me, Christophe. And this is what we have to change, of course, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
But there was, something I found very fascinating reading that report and the article on Nature, is that during the study they found out that there was a regular pattern on the day of the circle when the heart rate variability was higher. Was higher, and the heart rate was lower, and that's on day 5. So it's quite precise. And so I went to my Oura ring, out to my app, and I checked. I'm like, well, yeah, it works. Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. This discovery or this association, whilst Whoop have included it in this science allows the adoption across potentially any wearable that tracks heart rate and heart rate variability, which amplifies the data, which allows us to study it more, legitimize it, integrate it into the record, and thereby enriches our ability to help everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not a physician, but I worked on a startup, or together with a startup that was specifically focused on HRV, the heart rate variability. And one of the biggest issues that he had with his startup was that it's very hard to find those tools that measure it correct, because it consumes a lot of battery. So Oura Ring might be doing that pretty well today, but even they don't measure it 100% of the day, I guess. So there's still some issues
now.
They do now? Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the biggest challenges with HRV. You have to see the full picture, and not just like my Apple Watch does the same, but it's only like every 5 minutes, 30 seconds or 20 seconds, which is not a good measure to actually to measure HRV.
Particularly
now they do it every 15 minutes, for Oura. But now they do night and the day. They do stress level in the day using HRV.
Yeah, same.
Increasing the resolution of that, as we're saying, going from 15 minutes to 10 to 5 to 1 to constant, is of course very important, because the intelligence, the information is probably in that gap, because of how heart rate variability, because it varies, it varies up and down, it's that kind of detail. So I suppose as people get tighter and tighter on that, we're going to get even more insights. And of course, that's the inevitable direction of this as we make advances with the technology and sensors and compute.
Yeah, really nice. I'll go to Samsung. They also have a ring. And I go back to the CES event there for another Healthusiasm. You may have seen the Samsung CEO giving the keynote with probably the most stupid title ever: AI for all, every day, everywhere. I think if you would have asked ChatGPT to optimize that title, I think it would have been better. But it's like the cheesiest of all titles for keynotes. But it was really focusing on how AI will be integrated in our homes to simplify life. Now, obviously, I always say that our homes are the epicenter of our health and even our health management. And so health will play a big role in that. And indeed, I think it was Hong Pak, the senior vice president of digital health of Samsung, who said that everything related to the home and all the appliances that they will put out, their ecosystem that they will build, will be made to support your health goals. I mean, we already talked about it in episode 20 when we mentioned the plans of Samsung. But so what we will have is, the smartwatch, the Galaxy Ring, those kind of easy health wearables, trackers that we already have today, they will be paired with all the data that is generated at home, whether it's lights, temperature, all of these things, which will then help to really manage your health when you are at home. And at the same time, they showcased their Care Hub platform, Samsung was, which is basically a marketplace of devices and services for health and self-care. So again, they are really expanding their health ecosystem to manage health at home. It was episode 42, the last episode that we did in 2024 was all about health at home. And so Samsung really at CES came forward saying that we are going into that direction really hard.
I was going to say, maybe I've got a question for you, Aline and Christophe. Your thoughts is that you see big companies making big plays to be the natural portal to this information. Samsung doing it, Apple doing it, and everything like that. And of course, that is a trend that's going one way. What do you think? My preference is that the ability to be able to do things with this rests in the hands of the person or the smaller operator as well. It's something that I'm seeing more and more, and AI enables it, that if the data is available through a sensor, as long as I can access that data, I can process that myself. And I'm just wondering what you think about that tension between the power or the control over that resting in larger players versus smaller players when it comes to health.
Well, the thing is that I think, Keith, you're a doctor and maybe you can make sense of the data that you collect. Like, to be honest, like I can't really, I see my data on Oura. Sometimes I'm like, okay, it gives me an idea, but I don't fully understand what it means. So having someone, maybe not a big company, but someone that can interpret for me, not just having the raw data for me as a user. No.
And that's really interesting because Christophe, you talked about, AI for everyone all the time kind of thing. I increasingly think of AI as being the same as saying computer or fire or water or energy. It's a sort of layer or surface that goes across everything. But what it's bringing is agency and intelligence. So, Aline, when you say that, of course, that makes sense. But of course, the promise of AI is that which currently needs a doctor to interpret is available to anyone and everyone, So this is maybe what I'm getting at is that the great promise is that protected intelligence is becoming distributed. So for you, Aline, or anyone else with this, and I've gone through it the same with my wearables, trying to work out what's going on. I need help to interpret it too. But the tools that people can use personally are getting much better. And I think that's the most exciting thing for me is people truly having the power to take, because then they can do what is personal to them as opposed to having to wait for someone else to tell them what is important.
Yeah, and I think to answer your question, I don't mind if it is a big player.
Mm-hmm.
I think the dynamics that we will see because of AI, as you said just a second ago, is that, and we mentioned in a previous episode as well, in my opinion, there are three big fields in healthcare. There's the specialty care, there's the primary care, and there's the self-care. What you see is that all these players are really active in the self-care, and they are slowly moving into the primary care. The specialty care is becoming hyper specialized, so that's a world on its own, and self-care is growing massively. And to me, in between those two fields, primary care needs to reinvent itself. I always say primary care is in no man's land, because indeed, why would you perhaps even still need a doctor to interpret certain data if everything is already done by certified and approved softwares and AIs and what have you all. So I think that is something that we are seeing in the next 5 to 10 years, that primary care will really have to reinvent their role, definitely.
Yeah. And so I'm a primary care physician, and I think you're right that primary care has to change. I'll also make the argument that primary care is kind of the most important aspect of delivering healthcare at scale outside self-care. When people talk, it's interesting when people talk about primary care and they talk about specialisms, but primary care is at risk because, AI can do this, that, and the next thing. And you may understand why I say this, but I think it's the exact opposite. I think specialist care is at greatest risk because specialist care is focused on delivering and integrating the latest research, the depth of knowledge and everything like that, but in a very, very narrow area. The moment that AI can do that narrow area as well as that specialism is not gone, but fundamentally changed. Come back out to the higher level, to primary care. What is it about primary care that I like and I think is important? Now, there's the medicine. We've talked about this before, health and care. The health bit, the technical part, the transactional bit, yeah, that can be done too. But the power of primary care, and actually the power of self-care in humans, is the care. It's being able to help one human make sense of all of this. And I think primary care, when it's done well, is very, very good at that. And if we can draw in that specialist knowledge and then help people make sense of it, I think that could be a good way to go. The truth is it'll be somewhere in between, but yeah.
Well, I think what you're saying is right. If primary care managed this really well, the human care, then they will be super important. The question is if this is happening today. I think in the what I call the post-knowledge world, where knowledge will be shared equally amongst everyone, let's hope, at least in some ways or forms, what we'll see is that in the specialty segments, and I'm not talking about healthcare only, but definitely also in healthcare, is that the specialty care will require experts that maybe don't understand the expertise and the specialties anymore that much, but who will need to add this layer of ethical on top of things, maybe some morality, maybe some moral questions that they need to answer. And they will only be able to do that because they have a certain expertise. So that will be their role. And obviously, you're right, specialty will become so specialized. I mean, we've seen it with DeepMind and the protein folding, etc. It's hard to understand what is happening almost even for specialists. But they have that layer of, we can sort of understand it and we can add that moral layer on top of it. And on the other hand, if things become automated, which will happen in primary care, then the human values will become important there in a way that we need to be human again in relationship with the ones that we are. And so indeed, primary care will become very human care because they need to automate the things that can be automated. And in specialty care, I think it will become about, human values, ethical questions, moral discussions, those kind of things. And even if they don't understand it fully or grasp it fully, they will have more knowledge than anybody else to add that layer. That's kind of how I see it indeed as well.
Yeah. And we've got right now, self-care, primary care, secondary care. It's nice to move towards a world where there's just one thing. It's care. It doesn't matter where it's being delivered and who's doing it, but it's care.
Yeah, lovely. By the way, I'm going back to we were mentioning about self-care and the optimization and the fact that you have maybe an AI that can coach you. And actually, Panasonic announced something as well during CES. I don't know if you noticed it. Panasonic is not your typical player in health, but they announced Panasonic Well. And their idea was to really help families make health and wellness a natural part of their daily lives. I mean, we all know that taking care of yourself is really sometimes difficult because there's work, raising children, household, family, friends, the things that you do. And so it's very hard to remind yourself or to be focused on taking care of your health, to manage your health. And so what they created is something which is called Umi, which is a family health coach. And it's powered by Anthropic's AI model. So here we are, AI that is automizing stuff. And so what it does is it really encourages positive behavior changes, but with a focus on joy and human interactions. That's why they have this family vision. The idea is that Umi is amongst your family and even perhaps your friends to together actually create personalized, actionable health plans. It's really about building healthy habits around movement, nutrition, personal time, family bonding, all of those kind of things. And obviously they can't do it alone. They partner with Calm, Blue Apron, Precision Nutrition, all the big ones out there to make sure that in that Umi ecosystem, that health coach can really help you change your habits within your family and friends circle.
So I don't know if you saw that, but they gave some prizes to startups. And one of the winners was your coach, Eugene and Marina's company.
You did? Yeah.
Fantastic news.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I mean, good. I mean, they're working really hard and it's a lovely promise that they have. Good to hear. Nice to hear. Moving back to you, Keith, are we with you? Do you still have some Healthusiasms?
Well, yes. I mean, there was, like I said, a couple other things, but I suppose choosing between them and mixing up a little bit. I previously talked about the fact that I like games. I love games. And so I'm always delighted when games get talked about. And there's one I want to talk about, which I heard a little bit about from a company called BFB and a product called Luminova. And Luminova is a game targeted for children between the ages of 7 and 12 that is like a games master. It charges children to perform quests. And those quests are specifically to help them do the practices of CBT to help address issues of anxiety, phobias, social avoidance, and so on. Now, this isn't particularly new, I think. I mean, there's a lot of, games for health, and gamification is used quite widely. But what's nice about the story that I saw is it kind of brings together a few things. It's a nice product that, parents can work with their children. It works well to limit screen time. It uses proven evidence-based approaches. And it does it in a very important area, which is child mental health and wellness, which is currently a really large problem and has grown since the pandemic. It's often kind of neglected as well. Pediatric technology is a poor orphan of a lot of other areas as well. So it's great to see that. But the bit that I really liked picking up on, and maybe it's a slightly drier part, but important, is that it doesn't matter how great these things are in a healthcare system, they have to kind of be approved and they have to kind of be paid for, particularly in somewhere like the NHS, where people aren't used to paying for these things themselves directly. And this product not only got NICE, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, approval and recommendation, but a commissioning body, those that pay for healthcare, also agreed to pay for it. And so this product is now available to prescribe for these children in Herefordshire and Worcestershire here in the UK. So all those barriers you have to get, all the way from a great idea that solves an important problem. Anyone working in this space knows that, well, that's fantastic, but you've got everything else to do. Here we have an example of something making it through. And that is wonderful news. Job's not done. People still need to know about it, still need to use it. It still has to work in the real world at scale. But I was really pleased to see that happening.
Yeah, totally. We've covered a couple of these games initiatives in the past as well here. I think it's always good to hear because that is the world of our children, right? Whether we want it or not sometimes, that's the actual truth. Now, Keith, you said already 2 times in the pod today that people are not used to pay for health, which is true, which is actually the truth in the whole of Europe. It's a bit less in the States. However, I always feel obliged to say this one thing, is that the healthcare system indeed is funded by governments. And so we feel like people are not used to pay for things that improve their health. On the other hand, I always have to say this, is that the wellness economy is a 6.3 trillion business. Not today, but 1 year ago already. Which is 4 times as big as the pharmaceutical industry, which is bigger than the green economy, which is bigger than, IT, which is bigger than the sports, food and beverages. So it's one of the biggest industries out there. And there people pay 100% of all these solutions. It's not reimbursed, right? So I always tend to say this out loud because people really want to pay if they feel like it might do good for their health and well-being. And obviously, I think the healthcare sector needs to have that, in my opinion, that's objective to realize what does wellness do differently that we don't, that maybe they are willing to pay for it more. I mean, you went to Neko Health. I suppose that it's not reimbursed.
Oh, no, I was out of my pocket, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, people are willing to pay for it. They have a long waiting list. So there is a willingness to pay for health. It just needs to be a good solution. And healthcare, I think, fails to bring forward solutions that people want to pay for.
Yeah, I think it's right that you raise it, and you must keep raising it. And it's a good point. And I think there's another aspect to it as well. And I'm seeing this more and more, is that you're right. This is a UK perspective. Maybe Europe shares some of it. There may be parts of the world where this is less so. I'm not used to paying directly for my healthcare, but I am used to paying for my health, wellness, my fitness and wellness, right? What I'm seeing is that wellness is taking over health. or is nibbling away at it. There's a lot
Exactly.
of reasons for that. But one of the primary drivers, I think, is that as healthcare gets harder to access for a whole bunch of different reasons, people still have that need to be healthy as well. And so they naturally need to direct that somewhere. And as we see people going, the way that I've observed it is that people going to the gym, went to the gym to exercise. And then they went to the gym and they started saying, well, what about my diet? And they started thinking a little bit more holistically. And gyms and the fitness sector has responded. What we're also now seeing is people go and say, but I also want to know what my hormone status is. Can you recommend, like, where can I get blood tests and everything? So people say, I'm not going to pay for healthcare. I'm paying for fitness. And then in that setting, I'm going to pay for some blood tests. I'm going to pay for this.
Mm-hmm.
And I am seeing the wellness sector, the fitness sector saying, of course, we'll provide you with this. So they are growing their health offering. And that's happening more and more. And I think not that this is a battle between health and wellness, but it's even more important for those providing healthcare in the traditional sense to be aware that our inability to meet the wants and increasingly needs of those people is going to be served by someone else or some other area. That is going to be wellness. So that 6.3 trillion or whatever it is you said is undoubtedly going to get bigger, not just because people are more interested in it, but it's going to be nibbling away at the healthcare side.
You kind of described Healthusiasm really well there.
Well, yeah, I should hope so, but maybe pitching it another way too. And again, evidence, Christophe, that you're on the money with your vision on this and how you describe it.
Thank you. By the way, related to gyms, I saw a recent, I don't have the numbers with me, but I saw a recent study that said that based on where people went, and so it's like purely based on your location-based tracking, the growth in gyms was 6.6%. So people went into gyms 6.6% more than last year. Whilst in other locations like restaurants and even retail stores, it was only a growth of 0.2%. So people are really focused on going indeed to improve their health. There was another event in January, not just CES in the States, but there was also the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, which was 1 week later, where Nvidia announced an incredible bunch of partnerships with some of the best companies in their fields, like IQVIA, Illumina, and Mayo Clinic. I'll come to you and Keith to briefly introduce those companies. But first of all, if you're not familiar with Nvidia, well, shame on you because it's the biggest company in the world, perhaps. So you might want to know it. They're mainly known because they are the producer of the graphic processing units, the GPUs, which is basically the thinking power of everything from gaming to computing, advanced computing, AI, data centers, self-driving cars, what have you. So that's why they are the biggest company in the world. So if the biggest company in the world announces partnerships with these other big players, it promises to be really good. And I'll briefly introduce you what they are planning to do. First, there's the partnership with Illumina. I don't know if you know it, Keith, Illumina.
Yeah, so Illumina is well known in the space. In short, they do laboratory testing, but particularly genomics and genetic sequencing. So, they're very strongly associated with that. They're behind that massive reduction in cost and massive increase in capability of sequencing.
Yeah, exactly. And so what they do, obviously, if they partner up with Nvidia, the GPU processor, they will definitely be able to analyze data quicker, better, and more. And so what they want to do is link all the data that Illumina has on these genomics to really identify easier ways to develop life-saving therapies. It's the biggest company in genomics with the most data, working with the one that has the biggest power to analyze these data. Pretty amazing. Then there's a partnership with Mayo Clinic. Could you introduce that, Keith, just for the interaction of the podcast?
Sure, of course. Yeah. And I mean, when you think of the Mayo Clinic, you think of like world-class medical expertise, fantastic specialisms, fantastic advances in how healthcare can be provided, not only in the US, but around the world. So one of the preeminent healthcare providers on earth.
Yeah. So indeed, leadership in health innovation is definitely the word here. What they've done, the Mayo Clinic, is they built a platform that uses robotic scanning. And that platform has created a data set of 20 million whole slide images with 10 million patient-associated records. So it's quite a substantial database. And so with the NVIDIA's platform, they really want to make some advancements in digital pathology, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, which is the process of using digital technology to analyze and interpret medical images. So they have this data set of all these images, and with NVIDIA, they want to analyze it even faster, better, and build more knowledge on that. And then there was IQVIA, which is a leading global provider on advanced analytics, technology solutions, but also clinical research. And so together with NVIDIA, IQVIA will build tools that are improving the clinical trials and most specifically the whole workflows in there. Because clinical trials and the drug development parts are the most time consuming, also the most costly part probably within the development of drugs. And so basically how they will do it is they will create, using the agentic AIs, they will create digital employees, making sure that these agents, AI agents, can really help patients in the clinical trials, because these AIs, they can think, they can act, they can handle all the complex tasks to really help the researchers save time. Now, the ultimate goal, because I mean, we're talking the biggest company in the world with 3 of the biggest players in their own field. The ultimate goal, of course, for NVIDIA, and they clearly said it out loud, is that these partnerships are very important cornerstones to achieve that goal, and that is building a human digital twin, which is a dynamic digital representation, obviously, that contains all your medical information, the medical imaging, the pathology, the health records, the wearables, all the data that you can gather on a person to build that digital twin of that person. And I think it's really amazing to announce it like casually almost. Hey, we're the biggest company in the world, and we are partnering up with 3 other big companies. Oh, and by the way, we also have an Inception program where we are working together with 3,500 healthcare startups that we offer AI to make sure that we even gather even more data. So I think I was blown away by that announcement, to be honest, because NVIDIA is a very powerful company, and I think what they can do there, it will totally change healthcare, I think.
Yeah. This is the era of being blown away, folks. I mean, like, the pace of change is crazy. When you think of what AI needs, the ingredients for AI at its simplest are compute, energy, and data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you've just talked about there, and the capabilities, of course, the knowledge. But NVIDIA, top of the tree in terms of compute. Data, top of the tree in terms of companies like IQVIA and the Mayo Clinic. And then for Mayo Clinic, replace it with any large, high-quality data storage place. Energy, we haven't covered it in this one, and we have to get through that. That's maybe something to talk about another time, but tremendously exciting. And then AI helps us address 2 real problems that we face. We don't have enough researchers to do the research at pace to turn all these numbers into actionable intelligence. And with agentic AI, we start to crack that. We start to say, well, I maybe, instead of 100 researchers, I'll spin up as many as I can afford with the compute to do the basic science, to get the data, which can then be crunched by the AI. What's the outcome of all of this? And we saw Demis Hassabis at DeepMind talking about this week as well. Drug trials run digitally. The time from identifying a drug that might work to screening it out to putting it through the testing, instead of taking years and years, turns to year or months, which means that pipeline of the effective personalized therapies that we're all hoping for accelerates. And that is just one area of everything.
It's amazing.
Incredible times. As long as it helps people, as long as we don't misstep along the way, there's all that. And Aline, of course, making sure that this doesn't just help some groups, but all groups and all parts of the world.
Exactly.
We can't just concentrate this in one space, because it just widens that gap.
Yeah, totally. But exciting times ahead, and a lot of innovations happening. Aline, you still have some more Healthusiasms for us?
Yeah, I have one also related to AI, and I think they can bring a lot of hope for the future. It's a news coming from Scotland, Keith. It's a project called NeurEye, and it's a research team, so from Scotland, who are working together with high street opticians to develop a digital tool that can predict a person's risk of dementia from a routine eye test, looking at retina pictures. So they will use AI to analyze those images together with demographics data, treatment history, and pre-existing conditions. And the idea is to find a pattern that could indicate that a person is at risk of developing dementia, and it can also give a picture of brain health. And I think that's fantastic. And I've seen more things like that this week. There was another company who is also working on retina pictures, and they want to identify brain tumor from those pictures. I think it's nice to see that the eye is really becoming more and more the door to the brain, and that we can understand the brain better through the eyes.
It's funny because I was just looking that up. I remember reading that article and I couldn't remember the details anymore. And I was looking that, brain tumor article up, but good that you mentioned it indeed. Keith, your thoughts?
Scotland, what can I say? Of course. I'll come back to Scotland again in a moment, but no, wherever this is happening, Aline, you're absolutely right. The most visible part of your brain is at the back of your eye. It is an extension of the brain just there, and you can see directly on that. A friend of mine, Pierce Keane, working at Moorfields, is an ophthalmologist that does a lot of work with AI, and he's very big on oculomics, using everything you can see at the back of the eye as a window into the whole body, be that the brain, the circulation, etc., etc. And the nice thing about this too is that we want to try and use all the opportunities to be able to deliver healthcare or detect issues. And opticians are a great place. There's a lot of them. And in the UK, at least, and maybe around the world, they're increasingly used to deliver healthcare services. People tend to worry about their eyes. They want to see well. So they'll go to the optician when they might not go to the doctor. And there they can have their blood pressure checked or tested through this. And to be able to add in extra screening from those views of the back of the eye, it's very powerful. It means that we can see more of our population, help maybe identify things earlier, and then take action. So yeah, more power to the opticians and everyone, contributing towards this.
Yeah, we just need to solve the problem of access to the optician then, because it's very hard. There's a long waiting list, at least in Belgium and large parts of Europe. It takes months and months to get in.
That is interesting because the UK, it's very easy. There's lots of opticians, many commercial places that do partner with healthcare services. So I wouldn't struggle in any way to be seen by an optician and have all these additional things done. That's quite interesting to me, that what you just said there.
But Christophe, I think you mean ophthalmologist, no?
Oh, yeah. All right, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, then yes, you're right.
Yeah. Because you were mentioning, you were referring to the optician in the high streets, the ones that sell the glasses, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, so clarifying that, we still have a limited number of ophthalmologists, and eye disease is, a big problem around the world, and UK, Belgium, and everything. But then I suppose, Pierce Keane's point is that this can take that expertise, like we talked about earlier on, and for proven areas, put that in the hands of other people to be able to widen the access. And then the specialist services then have things triaged appropriately, and that journey to see the specialist where necessary becomes faster.
Okay, very good. We're coming at the end pretty much. Keith, do you still have one left for us, or what do you? Well,
I mean, yes, I can just briefly say, I always feel a bit guilty. It always comes back to AI. But there is one interesting one. Is just briefly, when I worked at Babylon, a company that I worked at before, I met lots of very interesting people who've gone on to do interesting things as well. And one such person is a lady called Stina Sanders. Stina was on the marketing side in Babylon, and she still works in that sort of area, but she is also on TikTok and Instagram and the like. And she does relationship counseling. This is the area that she's interested in. And she recently put up a couple of posts where she said, well, can ChatGPT act as a relationship counselor? Maybe I should have saved this for the Valentine's Day episode. But
when Mo is around, because this seems like a topic Mo would love to deep dive on.
Yeah, so I can share the link so they can be put out there. But Stina Sanders on Instagram did 2 short videos where her partner basically asked ChatGPT a relationship question. And those relationship questions, what were they again? Oh, yeah, I'm dealing with heartbreak. I'm arguing with my partner all the time. And is this person the one? Right? The one person they should be with. So he asked ChatGPT, and so he held on to that. But then he didn't show Stina, and then he asked her the same question. And so she gave her advice in a sort of quite short time, and then compared it afterwards. And her verdict was that actually ChatGPT was very good, and she felt that she was actually at a bit of a disadvantage. Now, she did also say that you've got to be careful about these things. ChatGPT is not meant for this, but it indicates maybe some value. But it also, once again, emphasizes the importance of time and the human aspect of this, because it's one thing knowing the facts about dealing with heartbreak. It's another thing to feel heartbreak and have someone hear you feeling heartbreak. And I think within that, I wanted to just share that because, again, it starts to separate out that which is technical about healthcare and that which is human about healthcare. And, whenever you hear stories, I'd always encourage people to think that way, is that, where is the technology staying out of the way of me being with a person? And when that happens, I think that's when we're all doing well.
Totally. And I think we had episode 17 was on virtual companions. We're a little further down the road now, and I think 2025 will be all about virtual companions, definitely with the AI agents and so forth. So I think we need to have another episode on virtual companions and what it can do to our relationships. Good. Time to almost wrap up. I have real quick, as per usual, a couple of unusual ones, and I'll start with you, Aline, and it's a very easy one. It's not tech related. I think it's a very obvious one. What are calm corners? Calm corners. They're often called adult calm corners as well. So I don't know if I pronounce it well. Calm corners.
I don't know. Would I say place where you can relax and do some meditation and wind down?
Yeah, exactly. It's a growing trend for creating peaceful spaces at home. It's like having your personal sanctuary to relax, recharge, escape, basically.
I'm trying to build one right now. In one of the other rooms, a calm corner with no television.
Yeah, but it's more and more. I mean, I work a lot with home builders, or I speak at those type of conferences. And indeed, it's one of the things that pops up more and more. People want to have a separate room or a place where they can actually have some me time, comfortable seating, soft lighting, sensory tools, mindfulness aids, no television, personal touches. I mean, lots of things where you can meditate, take some time for yourself, read perhaps even. So calm corners is one of the big trends that we see definitely in our homes. We talked about home health in last episode, but this is definitely part of health at home as well.
Can I share something quickly with you? When I moved in that apartment here in Barcelona, so the apartment was empty, and to decorate the apartment, I decided to follow Feng Shui, because for me that was a good inspiration, good start. And when people come and visit me, they actually say that it's very calm and quiet here. That I think Feng Shui is helping with that, to find the right energy, calmness. And so I guess that my old house, it's kind of the calm corner.
Yeah, definitely. It's good. Good to have you done. Actually, there's in my latest book, there's a whole chapter on how we adapt our homes, and Feng Shui is one of them. But there's a lot of other things, like we have more plants, that we use more natural resources, or like wood, or things that come from nature to have that calming effect on us. And then the final is the last one is for you, which I think is also a bit of an obvious one, Keith, putting a little bit of pressure here. What is nocturism?
Nocturism. Okay, breaking it down, relying on my classics. This is about doing tourism at night.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well done. And again, here it's a trend that we see in traveling, where people indeed want to explore destinations at night to enjoy different types of experiences. But the most interesting thing is that very often, if you look at tourism, there's a lot of places that are, very crowded with tourists, which makes certain spots very hectic, not fun to be. I mean, you can't even see the places really nice. which can lead to fatigue. It could impact your mental well-being, and that's not the purpose if you're traveling. And so this noctourism that we see popping up more and more is really to see the places with less people, which can reduce stress. It's better for your mental health. It might even improve your sleep patterns, what have you all. And you have more time to freedom to walk around and so forth. So it's really something that we see popping up. So here we go. This is what we had for this week's. Thank you all for your Healthusiasms. And yep, as I always say, it is a Healthusiasm world indeed. We see so many positive changes that are making our world a little healthier and happier. And I think in this episode, we need to do the count, but there might be at least 20 or 30 that we touched upon. So if that is not Healthusiasm, I don't know what is. Thank you for listening. If you like this show, hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, that is. You can visit healthusiasm.com to subscribe to the newsletter and learn more about our panelists. For now, I'd like to thank our panelists for this week for their Healthusiasm. Thank you, Aline Noizet and Dr. Keith Grimes. My name is Christophe Jauquet. We are the Healthusiasm panel, and we'd love to see you again next week for some more Healthusiasm. Ciao.